Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Having too many people standing with you is a good problem to have in a time like this. I'm New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and I thank you for being here today at what really is, in some respects, a defining moment for our state and for our country. I'm honored to stand here alongside many of the state's leading advocates and activists dedicating to protecting the rights of vulnerable New Yorkers, all vulnerable New Yorkers, immigrants, communities of color, Muslims, the LGBTQ community, and more. Earlier this morning, these leaders and I, along with top lawyers from my office, began what I hope will be a series of very productive conversations about how we move forward together in this era of heightened tensions. This year's presidential election has laid bare some deep divisions in our nation. The depth of those divisions and the ugliness of the rhetoric during the campaign has surprised and even frightened many New Yorkers. And sadly, in recent days, we have seen a surge in bias attacks and hate crimes across the nation, including some right here in New York. The NYPD just announced a 31% increase in bias-related crime over the last year, primarily directed at Muslims and Jews. And to put it bluntly, a lot of people out there are scared right now. Many parents and teachers feel helpless. They're dealing with traumatized kids, often in tears. A lot of New York families are worried about their future. As New York's top law enforcement officer, I stand here today to tell everyone who's understandably scared that my team stands with you, with our colleagues in law enforcement across the state, and we will have your back. Our staff of skilled and savvy attorneys has decades of experience fighting for the civil rights of all New Yorkers. We are the greatest city in the world because of our diversity. We celebrate our diversity. My team is dedicated to protecting everything that makes New York so special. We already protect the rights of New Yorkers to vote, to go to school, to have access to public accommodations, and to practice their religion freely. We have set up new initiatives and units in our office to protect religious freedom, to deal with problems in school districts that we're not handling bullying and bias correctly. We did not anticipate that there would be even more of a need for those initiatives and those units as we move forward. We are already on our way to building the infrastructure we need to deal with this. We stand ready to commit whatever resources we can to ensure equality as we prepare for a possible uptick in hate crimes or other violations of New Yorkers' civil rights. And I would urge you that we are very committed to doing this in solidarity, both with the activists and those who are on the front lines and have the confidence and access to vulnerable communities who are often afraid to come forward and speak to law enforcement. But also, we have been in contact with the NYPD and multiple other local law enforcement agencies and district attorneys across the state to make sure that they have the information and the resources and the will to uphold the rights of all New Yorkers. Tom Zogabe, the head of the DA's Association, I spoke to yesterday. He is working with us to get guidance out to district attorneys all across the state to ensure that even in smaller jurisdictions, they know that we will provide additional resources should they have problems enforcing laws to protect New Yorkers. And he would have been with us today, but for a conflict. Earlier today, in the first sort of real concrete step we've taken, my office issued a bulletin to law enforcement offices all across the state of New York that outlines New York's hate crimes law and stresses the need for law enforcement to properly identify incidents as possible hate crimes right away. It provides guidance in other areas of civil rights law as well. This is a time of uncertainty, but it is not a time to despair. This is a time for us to recommit ourselves to the ideals that make this city and this nation great. New York has a long history dating back to colonial times of protecting and upholding the rule of law and of welcoming everyone. Our diversity is our greatest strength, and we will not allow anyone to turn that against us. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation has never been perfect. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal, those words were far from true. Women were not even in the sentence, couldn't vote, and in many places couldn't own property. Slavery was widespread. Jews and other non-Christians labored under a host of discriminatory disability laws. But the history of America is a history of generation after generation building a series of movements to make Thomas Jefferson's words ever more true. So we stand here today in the tradition of the abolition movement, the women's suffrage movement, the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ equality movement. We are challenged today to join that great tradition. And we will not be divided by hate or prejudice. The solidarity that is being shown and people reaching across lines, which had divided us before, is very inspiring to see. We are all in this together. And I would emphasize this, as I've said it several times, you do not get to pick and choose your bigots. You can't say, I just want the anti-Muslim and anti-Mexican bigots to speak up. That you give license to them all. And I have been targeted with anti-Semitic, a lot of anti-Semitic hate speech and threats. I know that we have to all stand together. As the sonnet posted at the Statue of Liberty states, and it concludes with the line that shows how much our New York embraces both pluralism and those in need. It concludes, send these the homeless tempest tossed to me, I lift my lamp besides the golden door. Many Americans today feel tempest tossed. They feel scared and bewildered, and it is up to all of us in New York to make sure that that lamp stays aloft and that the golden door in New York always remains open. This will be a safe place for all, and we're committed to that. And my office will always stand in solidarity with you on this quintessentially American mission. And a few words in Spanish. En este momento de incertidumbre, quiero enviar un fuerte mensaje a las comunidades que sienten amenazadas. La Fiscalía General de Nueva York está con ustedes. So thank you for joining me here today, and I'd now like to introduce a great leader in the fight for equality here in New York and across the nation, Hector Figueroa, president of 32BJ.
First, good morning, buenos dias, everyone. I want to thank our Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, for taking this step and for his leadership and the entire office of the AG, who is not new to this issue. We've been really lucky in New York to have a champion of workers' rights and human rights in this office. Our union stands in solidarity with everyone who is concerned about this moment, about protecting the rights of all of our residents, whether they are here as naturalized citizens, born citizens, or they are here in a transition to be able to have all the rights that they're entitled to, given the hard work and the contribution to our state. Our union in particular, we have 160,000 members in this country. Half of them live in New York State. 2 out of 3 were born in some other country. And we have the resources and the ability to reach to them and protect them, but we know that that is not enough. By being here, we want to echo the words of our Attorney General, that we're going to work with his office, work with all the allies who are here to make New York a place that is not only a safe haven, but actually continues to advance the perfection of our democracy and embracing everyone. And we're going to do that in many different ways. We're calling on all the labor unions, such as ourselves, to put our resources, all of our legal services, all of our union reps. This is a union issue, as it is also a human rights issue. We also want our elected officials to really come together like never before to reaffirm what the state is about and what we believe in, and to be really on the side of those who need us most. It's not a time to panic, it's a time to organize, it's a time to reaffirm who we are, to recommit, and really to work together so we make sure that not only do we safeguard our rights, but we actually advance what those rights and protections are. So I really want to thank again our good friend, Eric Schneiderman, and I look forward to work with everybody here and who is listening. This is a time that we were called for, we were ready for this time, and we're going to embrace this moment, confident that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the NYU Islamic Center and the New York City Police Department's Muslim chaplain, Imam Khalid Latif.
Since the election last Tuesday, over 300 reported incidents of harassment, intimidation, and hate have taken place in our country. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, even spaces meant to be safe, like schools, are not protected from it, with many incidents occurring with children as young as kindergarten all the way through high school and including many college campuses and universities. My own experiences have brought me into interaction with a 6-year-old who prior to the election was told by her classmates that she could not eat at the same lunch table as them because her skin color was different. And after the election could no longer hold back the tears because they now told her people like her would soon not be allowed in the school at all. The rapid increase in hate violence should not distract us from the bigotry that existed prior to last Tuesday. As a Muslim, my inside hurts not only with every act of hate against other Muslims in this past week, but also every cowardly act of anti-Semitism, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Black, anti-immigrant, anti-woman hate that the last week has shown us. This sentiment did not start simply in the last week alone, and if we are still in denial of the systemic and structural mechanisms that both exist and allow for the continued mistreatment of minorities of all kinds, we will continue to see that many more of the gross inequities and mistreatment that the last week has shown us. Organized evil will always triumph over disorganized righteousness. This is truth whether we choose to accept it or not. We can have good intentions all we want. If we have no plan, we will continue to be mistreated, our collective civil rights will not be in existence, and we'll find ourselves wondering how we let hate win. Our strength lies in embracing our diversity and coming behind only those leaders who support it, like our Attorney General. If we stay divided, all it does is empower those who want us to be disenfranchised. Our uniformity can no longer be of an external, a shared race, ethnicity, or class. But we must embrace a unity of the internal, shared values, shared hearts. That means our hearts should start to hurt every time we see a swastika graffitied for Jewish eyes to see. Every time a woman is made to feel unsafe or fearful of being sexually harassed or attacked because she wears a scarf on her head. Or every time one of our Black brothers and sisters are attacked and shot in the streets without any consequence. We have to build a strategy and empower leaders of all kinds to become transformational in their leadership rather than simply being reactive and meet mechanisms of hatred with mechanisms of our own. Statements, guidance, and continued support, such as what we are seeing from the Attorney General today, are a first step in a direction that is much needed. To meet institutional oppressions with institutional strength necessitates us coming together strategically from across diverse backgrounds. We have come together today, and most definitely, we will continue to come together tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now someone who we work with a great deal, a great partner of ours in supporting nonprofits and a great warrior for justice, Monsignor Kevin Sullivan of Catholic Charities.
Thank you. Over a century or so ago, at the end of an incredibly divisive, violent, death-dealing civil war, the Republican president of the United States said there should be malice towards none and charity towards all. We're here to say, after a very divisive campaign, we're here to say, in addition to that, justice and dignity for everybody in New York State and across this land. We're to say no to a new normal of disrespect, divisiveness, and hate. This task falls upon all of us together. That is why so many of us are here. We're grateful that the Attorney General of New York State has called us together. Catholic Charities has been proud to answer the calls of hundreds of thousands of immigrants from throughout New York State in the past number of years and provided them with the help of good information. We recommit ourselves to doing that. We have represented those who have fled from terror and violence in other countries. We recommit ourselves to doing that. And we commit ourselves to engaging all in our society to make this state, the great state that it is, in our nation, an even greater and an even stronger nation. We will do that only in solidarity with one another, in which we seek to build bridges, in which we calm anxiety and fear, and we challenge all of us to build a better state, a better city, a better country for the common good of all, and each depends on that. We do come with a bias, and our bias is it doesn't matter what your religion is, It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Our bias is that every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. And for that reason, no one should be disrespected. No one should be excluded. We all should build this common good together. Thank you.
Thank you. And now another fighter for justice and spiritual guide to me in times of need, the Executive Director of the New York Board of Rabbis, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
Thank you. Thank you. Being your rabbi is my full-time position.
There's a lot of work.
We teach our kids that 1 and 1 equals 2 in mathematics. We also need to teach our kids that in human relations, 1 and 1 equals 1, because we all share that oneness of spirit. Mr. Attorney General, I want to thank you, not just for today, but I want to thank you for the many yesterdays when we stood together in different houses of worship. And you reminded us that when it comes to prejudice and bigotry, we all are together in one house. I have learned over the years that when you scratch the skin or the surface of an anti-Semite, you will find someone who's not just anti-Jew, but someone who also is anti-everyone else who doesn't fit in to a particular configuration. I remember, Mr. Attorney General, you speaking at the Archdiocese here in New York, and you talked about a concept you learned when you were very young sitting in a synagogue. A concept we say in Hebrew is called mishpat echad, one standard of justice. Whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right, no matter where you are religiously, politically, there comes a time when all of us need to stand side by side against those who want to divide the us against them. I have found in New York, when you travel on the Bell Parkway and you're approaching the entrance to Staten Island, there are faith chapels there. All the faith chapels contiguous to one another. And I have seen that you can't pass one without passing the others. And maybe that image is something that's a lesson for all of us. You want to cross the bridge safely in life? You better learn to cross together. So some time ago, there was a famous song, I Gotta Be Me. We have a new song now, I Gotta Be We. And when it comes to the battle against bigotry, the we will stand together as one. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm proud to bring up the Executive Director of the Brooklyn Movement Center, Mark Winston Griffith.
Good morning. Thank you, Attorney General Schneiderman. I want to distinguish my remarks in certain ways. First of all, I'm Executive Director of the Brooklyn Movement Center, which is a multi-issue, predominantly black-led community organizing and social justice organization based in Bedford-Stuyvesant and Crown Heights. And when we had our conversation earlier today, when we had our meeting, the Attorney General made a point of saying that the change that we're looking for, the resistance we're looking for on some level, is going to happen, it's going to begin on a local level, and it needs to work its way up. So I want to reiterate a point that I made, in fact, during that meeting, is that if we have any hope of changing the culture that we now find ourselves in, if we have any way of resisting practice and hatred, we have to build the capacity of local organizations that are doing this work and people who are working at the grassroots level, because we indeed are small boats and we're facing a very big tide here. And so the role of the Brooklyn Movement Center in many ways is to resist, but it's also to organize, to mobilize, to educate, and to connect to local officials who are trying to do the right thing. So I want to make that point. My second point I want to make is that this sign here is amazing. We have Make America White Again and a swastika in a town called Wellsville, New York, right? And so I think what that's a metaphor for is the challenging of some very basic assumptions, the very basic assumptions about our humanity, about our equality that have been subverted through the election recently. And so while I don't want to fearmonger, what I do think it's important to acknowledge is the violence that can be meted out through public policy and through our public institutions, specifically, or at least particularly, the criminal justice system. And so in central Brooklyn, it's not just a hatred towards black folks and immigrants and other people of color, but it's violence against women, it's violence against queer folks that we really have to resist and to defend. So I do want to, the last point I want to make is that as we go forward, that we not just think about how we have to protect the interests of people of color and other folks who have been targeted by this hatred, but really have to also get past that and go on the offense and talk about how we can advance those interests as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I want to bring up Angela Fernandez, the Executive Director of the Northern Manhattan Immigrant Coalition.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good day. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to thank the Attorney General Schneiderman for really taking incredible leadership, not only on this issue of hate crimes, but also on the issue of protecting immigrants and expanding justice for immigrants. Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights is a community-based grassroots organization located in Upper Manhattan. We serve individuals from Northern Manhattan and the Bronx primarily. Since the election, our offices are overflowing with people coming because they are frightened and they are scared. We know that we are already going to do everything we can to expand the kinds of services that we can provide. But I also want to urge the immigrant community to know that you have a friend in the Attorney General's office and that there are offices throughout the state, that if you're afraid to go to local law enforcement, don't be afraid to go to the Attorney General's office upstate in their local offices to seek help and to seek support. Voy a hablar en español ahora. Soy Ángela Fernández, soy la directora de la Coalición de los Derechos de los Inmigrantes. Desde las elecciones en noviembre, esta semana pasada, hemos recibido muchísima gente entrando a nuestra oficina sumamente con mucho miedo. Le quiero decir que nosotros estamos ahí para ellos. Hay otras organizaciones también que están ahí por ellos. Y también le quiero comunicar que el fiscal general Schneiderman está apoyando a los inmigrantes y que también tiene oficinas por todo el estado de Nueva York que pueden ir a acudir para conseguir ayuda y protección. Muchísimas gracias.
And now from the Anti-Defamation League of New York, Evan Bernstein.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Schneiderman. You fight hate every day for New York, and we thank you so much. The Anti-Defamation League is a 100-plus-year-old civil rights organization that's mission is unique in the Jewish community, that it's a dual mission. It's to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all. And in the last 8+ days, we've seen an uptick in anti-Semitic and bias incidents unlike we've seen in decades. And it's very concerning to us. And we need to do everything we can as a community to fight what's metastasizing in our communities, this kind of hate. And I think this is a time for a call to action for the community. I get calls from people, what can I do? What can I do? Don't sit idly by. Do something. Engage. We have some amazing organizations standing behind us. Get engaged in the process. Get involved in the schools. Do something. Don't sit idly by. Kids are being bullied. Lives are changing as we speak. We need to do something to fight back and do the right thing for our children and for the future of the state of New York. Thank you.
Thank you. And now from the New York Civil Liberties Union, Donna Lieberman.
Thank you, Attorney General Schneiderman, for bringing us together today and for your leadership. People all over the country are reeling in shock, anger, and fear at the results of the election. But the New York Civil Liberties Union, which is the ACLU affiliate of New York, and our national organization, the ACLU, are here to say that we will not capitulate to the haters and dividers. We will stand strong together for New York values, for democratic, with a small d, democratic values shared by the majority of Americans. Values of fairness, of justice, and human dignity. Yes, we are scared as never before for ourselves and our children. But amidst the fear and mourning, we are heartened. We're heartened that New Yorkers, indeed people all over the country, are coming out to support the ACLU, to support Planned Parenthood, to support other civil rights organizations, indeed, and to stand up against hate and violence. Indeed, over 1 million people have become supporters of the ACLU, and we are a strong, united family. Somos todos inmigrantes. Somos todos afroamericanos. Somos todos Muslims and Jews. Somos todos mujeres. Somos todos LGBTQ. And we will stand united to make New York a safe haven and to try our best to make the United States a fair and just place. And we will build our own wall, a human wall against hate. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, from the National Action Network, I'm pleased to call up Kirsten Foy.
Thank you, Attorney General Schneiderman, for your progressive leadership and for putting me up behind Reverend Lieberman. We are not indignant because the Republicans won. We are not afraid because the Republicans won. We don't fear the Republicans. We are indignant and fearful because bigotry won the election. But we are not going to allow bigotry to inflict further injury on our brothers and sisters here in New York. So we intend to stand unified with one another, against hate, against hateful public policy. We are not going to allow for bigotry to whitewash our gorgeous mosaic. What you see behind you is the real America. What you see behind you is the future of America. And what we are fighting is its ugly past, which has reared its ugly head in an election. But we are not going to shrink, and we are not going to shy from our responsibilities one to another. I would implore us all to resist. Mark used the word resist, others used the word resist. It is our obligation to resist the normalization of hate. It is our obligation to resist the normalization of bigotry. We cannot, and this is directed towards the media and others, we cannot allow an agenda of hate to become acceptable, to become digestible for the American public. We all have an obligation to resist, not just policy, but to resist bigotry, to resist the emotion and the hate that ugly policy emanates from. Protesting is not a crime. Assault against women is a crime. Assault against Muslims, against LGBTQ, against anyone for who they are, those are real crimes. So you ran on a law and order platform, Mr. Trump. Why don't you stand up for law and order when people are being victimized by the hate that you spewed in your election? Stand up for law and order when women are getting beaten and abused. Stand up for law and order, not just for a vote, but for the dignity of New Yorkers and indeed all Americans. And I would just caution that as we fight against these irrational and inhumane deportations, we need to be concerned particularly about the deportations of people back to the nation of Haiti. Haiti has been ravaged by one natural disaster after another. And the deportation debate often excludes those who come from black nations, the Caribbean and the African nations. But we cannot allow people who have suffered so much to be shipped back, put on ships and shipped back to a place that has been devastated time and time again. So we're here to stand not just with the Haitian community, not just with all of the immigrant community, and not just all of the LGBT community, but we have all of New York standing here, and we're grateful for the leadership of Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are here today to take action. We will take some questions, but I just want to emphasize that I was one of the prime sponsors of the hate crimes bill when it passed in the Senate in 2000. We're providing guidance all over the state because Wellsville, which I believe is in Allegheny County, this is not a problem that exists in any one part of the state or another. It exists across the state and across the nation. We will continue to provide guidance, to work with our colleagues in government, in law enforcement. The Division of Human Rights has set up a hotline for people to call if they are concerned about contacting their local law enforcement officials. That's a statewide hotline, so they can contact our office. What we would urge people to do, if you're calling up and saying, what can I do? The first thing you can do is provide support to the organizations who are on the front lines for the people who are at risk. Provide support. You can go on our Charities Bureau's website and find good organizations that provide legal services. They're represented here today for the people who are scared, who need help. You can also go and pay a call on your local elected officials and demand to know what they are doing. It's not enough to issue a statement saying, I disagree with this. We need action, and we need action from the grassroots up, as was mentioned earlier. Finally, we will continue to meet, and we will continue to meet with our colleagues and groups around the state. This is the beginning of the next great movement for civil rights and human rights in America. Do not mistake this for anything other than an extraordinary opportunity. What was hidden is now revealed. And in the long run, we may look back on this and say, you know what, we are better off as a nation for having this out in the open. Is it ugly? Yes. But are things clear now? A lot clearer than they were before. And it's only in clarity. We say in the high holy days in my tradition, you can't really atone for your sins unless you see yourself clearly, and a people cannot atone for their sins unless they see themselves clearly. I think we're seeing things a lot more clearly now. It's time to take action. And with that, Eric Sufer will take your questions.
Identify your name and outlet. We'll start with on-topic questions first.
Hi there, I'm Rana with Brilliant NBC. Wondering about specifics about the bulletin. Is this an overview of the laws for officers, and who are they going to the hands of officers or just department heads? How is that going?
Yes, it's going to all of the different law enforcement departments in the state. I spoke to the head of the DA's Association. He's providing additional guidance to the district attorneys. The Association of Chiefs of Police. I had a very good talk with the head of the Sheriff's Association yesterday. So we are doing everything we can do to provide this information. There are agencies that have followed up with us already. The law is a little bit complicated. It's explained here in detail. We update people on the case law since we passed the statute. And there are other laws we will be speaking up about the Dignity for All Students Act, because we are hearing reports of problems in schools that we have to address also. So yes, this is going to everyone we can get it to. It is also posted on our website, and we encourage activists, community members, everyone to take a look. Know your rights. And if you're sitting home now wondering what you can do, write a check to a group who has lawyers that make sure people know their rights. The right to a lawyer is the right that helps you protect every other right. As New York's top law enforcement officer, I'm a deep believer in the rule of law and the unique role of American lawyers in protecting our rights. It's time for those of us in the bar also to step up.
Zach Fink from New York One. Do you make any connection between the rise in hate crimes and the rise in Trump? I mean, is there a direct correlation there as far as you're concerned?
The statistics are what the statistics are, but make America white again does resemble a slogan we heard a lot last year, so you can draw your own conclusions. Look, we don't want to imagine problems that don't yet exist. We don't know what is going to really happen. One thing we know is that we do have an uptick in bias-related violence. We also have been discussing our concerns about, because of the fear in the immigrant communities, the fear of fraud against immigrants, which is something our office has been very active about. People who seek to take advantage of desperate people, those are always the prime targets of fraudsters. So we're doing additional work to try and get the word out about that. We are anticipating further problems down the road, but we don't want to project problems that may not come into existence. One thing we know about the incoming administration is the fact that they say they're going to do something does not necessarily mean they're going to do something.
Allison Fox, AM New York Newsday. This is sort of a two-part question. First of all, specifically about the incidents that happened at the NYU, the new school, and in Crown Heights with the swastika on the sidewalk there. My question is, first of all, do you have any? Have there been any developments in that? I feel like I haven't necessarily heard of any developments in terms of catching the people who did any of those particular crimes. And my second is sort of building on that question. building off of a Trump slogan, and there were other incidents where, you know, there was a swastika next to the word Trump, and that's clearly a correlation. In the particular instances at the new school, NYU, and in Crown Heights, I believe there might have even been one on the train this morning. Is there any, I guess, direct correlation between, or any indication that those were inspired by the president-elect?
Well, first of all, investigations are ongoing. These are very recent crimes. We don't, law enforcement officers and prosecutors do not usually comment on ongoing investigations. It is very unusual to say, I feel compelled to update the country of the state of an investigation before an election or after an election. It's just not the way you're supposed to do business. So the fact that you're not hearing anything is an indication that the NYPD and others are doing their job. Second of all, let's distinguish two things. There is a campaign and there's a particular candidate, but there also is this phenomenon that several people have referred to of the normalization of hate speech, the normalization of open bigotry. These people who say, well, you know, I don't have to be PC anymore, so I can use these slurs. That is what we must fight back against. That's what we must tell our children. That's what we must reinforce in our classrooms. That's what we must reinforce in our churches, synagogues, mosques, wherever we gather together. It is not okay to be a bigot in New York or in America. It never has been. It never will be. Thank you. And there is no place in the United States that has, from its founding in the 1600s, had a commitment to pluralism and taking anyone who would get here like New York. We were unique among the colonies, many of which were formed by one distinct religious sect or another. It was open to everyone. And it has been, it should be, and we may enter a period of American history where states start to differentiate themselves one from another, where you have states with strong labor laws, environmental laws, civil rights laws, and states that don't. We are always going to be a state that welcomes everyone. And we may be seeing people who are tempest-tossed from other states coming to New York. We welcome you. We welcome you. Come with us and build the kind of society America was always supposed to be. Yeah, Donna doesn't want to take off-topic questions.
Scott Pringle, NBC News Radio. I understand that there's a report that Donald Trump is trying to settle 3 lawsuits all at once with Trump University. One of those, obviously, is your lawsuit. Your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to comment on the specifics, but it's been in the newspaper that there have been efforts to settle cases. Not really a surprise. There were settlement negotiations, I've said publicly before. I filed the lawsuit in August of 2013. So just to be clear, this had nothing to do with anything that happened in politics after that. This is just a straight-up fraud trial. And as with all cases, there are often settlement discussions. So I can't comment on the specifics.
Would you like to see Donald Trump testify in person?
Yes, I think that would be refreshing, but I think that in the first instance, the objective here is to get the money back to the people who were ripped off. So we're talking about real people whose real lives were affected, who spent thousands of dollars for classes that were certainly not worth everything they were cracked up to be. And again, when I emphasize to you, ladies and gentlemen, let us be cautious in assessing what the candidate said on the campaign trail and what he actually does. This is also a guy who said, my hand-picked experts will teach you my personal secrets that it took me a lifetime to develop in real estate. So treat the source with an appropriate level of judgment.
Nadine is worried from the Observer. Do you think that Governor Cuomo is correct in his assertion that Donald Trump being from New York would be a bonus for New York?
The governor has made a whole series of comments, and that was one piece of a much longer set of statements. And I think the point that he made is, and I think that the mayor has echoed this, look, where we can find common ground, we will find common ground. If you want to do a major infrastructure upgrade program and you want to close tax loopholes and things that a lot of us have supported for a long time, fine. But where we have a fundamental philosophical difference, where we believe in unity, we believe in compassion, we believe that we're all in this together, and we will oppose any effort to divide us. I think the governor and the mayor have spoken up to those issues as well. But we certainly are always ready to look for common ground. And again, we don't want to anticipate problems that may never come into existence, but we want to be prepared for whatever comes.
I'm concerned, I hear my listeners' concern about the bigotry and the hatred against them. And they are afraid to come forward. They're afraid to come for help. What can you say specifically to immigrant New Yorkers and to Black, Hispanic, Muslim New Yorkers who just, they're so disgusted and fearful, and their children are very, very upset.
Yeah.
What specifically?
Okay, very, very specifically, we never ask about your status when you contact our office. The hotline that was just set up by the Division of Human Rights is designed so that you can communicate things and preserve whatever level of confidentiality you can. People should not be afraid to come forward. I will tell you that there has been a stiffening of the backbone and an increase in solidarity among many, many people in the state of New York, in public life and in the private sector. There are employers who are coming forward saying, how do I protect my employees? So this is a movement, and movements start off, not one of the movements that I described earlier was started by a public official. They start by activists at the grassroots. Public officials are great at showing up at the end. Right? In the civil rights movement, it's time to sign the Civil Rights Act of '64. You get a lot of politicians there. They weren't back there with Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall in 1934. So this is a movement that is beginning, but I think that people should be open. They should be talking to people in the agencies that are represented here. You can talk to a legal services office. You can talk to Angela's organization. You can come forward. Come forward to your house of worship. Clergy are essential for this, and we are connected. The faith community is connected and united in a way that I'm incredibly proud of here across all denominations. So do not remain in the shadows. The more people who come forward, the safer it is for others to come forward. We are united. We are committed to protecting you. We'll do everything we can.
Christine, I'll just English. What are you specifically hearing from the Muslim community after the election? Do you have any new statistics or anecdotal evidence that you can share with us?
I mean, do you want to?
Question for
You want to say something? I mean, I think he already sort of answered that question, but do you want to embellish?
Sure. I think the Muslim community right now is in a place where it's anticipating, through the appointment of people like Bannon, advisors like Gaffney, changes in security policy that will be reflective of things that we saw immediately post 9/11. There's been talk about the reimplementation of the NSEERS program, which will require immigrants of certain countries to register with the INS. There's certain anxieties that will open up doors to policies that lended towards mass deportations of Muslims without really any prior understanding or indication that was something that was going to happen, wiretapping, surveillance, etc. I think also the Muslim community is becoming more cohesive and organized and recognizing the importance of relying upon allies such as those that I'm blessed to share the stage with today, and figures like the Attorney General to understand that where we play a role in remedying some of what it is that we've seen in the past, something that we have to reflect upon. I think the other thing that is critical that's been mentioned is that many Muslims are recognizing the realities that children are facing in schools right now. An increase in bullying against young Black and brown children, including many Muslims who in the New York City public school system make up 12% of our local public school system, and dealing with not only realities of students bullying and engaging in bias and harassment, but teachers not necessarily being aware of how to respond and reply to those realities, and taking on more of a bystander effect.
Vivian, wherever you are.
Okay. One more.
Speaking of anticipating problems, we issued a statement this morning about the blue sky laws and how the Trump administration may or may not be planning to call them out. Do you have any examples or can you talk about the importance of the blue sky laws here in New York and any examples of how you and your predecessors?
Sure. This comes from a comment that was made and traced back to sources in the transition team. The founders of our republic came up with some pretty amazing ideas that have stood the test of time, and one of them was to provide for a federal system in which you have protection at the state level as well as at the federal level. And before the federal government passed laws to protect investors against securities fraud in 1933 and 34, states across the country passed what are called blue sky laws. The Martin Act is our law. It is a powerful weapon against securities fraud. I have used it most recently and most prominently in my capacity as co-chair of the National Working Group to recover money from the banks that sold the bad mortgage-backed securities that blew up the economy in 2008. That working group, which I co-chair with the Department of Justice, has recovered close to $100 billion, and about $6 billion of that has come back to the state of New York. That is because we have states with blue sky laws that can, in some cases, do things that our federal counterparts cannot do. We will stand in defense of state blue sky laws, of state environmental laws, of state gun safety laws, and it's very important to understand that a group of people who up until a few years ago were very vehement about defending states' rights, we're going to remind them of those comments. It is very important to protect my ability and the ability of my counterparts all across America to defend our people in the event the federal government will not. That is the structure of the Constitution. That is how the United States of America were conceived. The basic building block is the state, and we will defend our rights and oppose any effort to weaken state laws to protect investors and consumers and the environment and our civil rights. This is the reason that the founders planned for this system. They actually did discuss, I think the term they used was scoundrel, the concern that scoundrels would put themselves forward for office. This is all in the history books. I'm not making this up. So, yes, it becomes very, very important. I mean, certainly during the era of George W. Bush's administration, when there was a lessening of enforcement from the Clinton years, that's when the New York State Attorney General's office got a lot of prominence for the enforcement of the Martin Act. The states are the backstop. The states are the next line of defense. And it is embedded in our system of jurisprudence that the state laws must be respected. There are folks out there who may try to show disrespect for the laws, and it's important for us to all be united across the country in standing up for the state's ability to protect its citizens, which is at the heart of the founders' vision for America.
One last one, Zach. If you could just, do you feel as though the state laws are adequate when it comes to hate crimes? Would you recommend any additional legislation? Let me just add something I've been hearing a little bit buzz about with the bill being discussed, that would maybe crack down on companies or newspaper companies for minor graffiti, minor vandalism, stuff that if it were in the vein of a hate crime, carry on.
Well, I think you're going to see a renewed commitment. There things that we should do? Sure. Are there packages of reforms that will be brought to bear? I think that one of the things that I actually made a note about earlier. Oh yeah, it is this issue that our state's human rights law has been interpreted by the courts not to extend to schools. That's something that could require a quick legislative fix. There are things we can do to strengthen our laws, and we have to be vigilant. And again, in addition to writing a check to an organization on the front lines, I urge everyone to contact your local representatives, ask what they are doing, what is their agenda, what's going to happen in the early days of this coming legislative session to fill in any gaps, strengthen our laws, provide the resources for enforcement, and to fill in wherever we have to in gaps left by the changes at the federal level. Really last one. Hey.
So, Mr. Attorney General, I don't know, did you happen to see the 60 Minutes interview with Mr. Trump on Sunday, in which he directly asked any of his supporters who are involved in prejudice or hate to stop it? Do you believe him? Do you think he was sincere? Are you calling him a scoundrel by implication here? You seem to be at that point. I'm just asking the question. Also, in regard to, are you saying here that anybody who supported Trump or voted for him is somehow involved in supporting him?
No, none of those things. And I did not watch the interview. I am not calling him a scoundrel. I think that was a line used by Benjamin Franklin, and he never met, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Trump. No, I was talking about the issue of there being a two-tier level of protections for Americans, and this is something that the founders had in mind, emphasizing the importance of state laws when federal agencies are unable or unwilling to do their job. Now, we've encountered this in the past in our office, and we've been, it's not a secret that there was what I consider to be an inadequate settlement with the banks on the mortgage-backed securities cases when I first took office in January 2011, and I fought with the current administration over that and got them to set up this national working group, and we've recovered a lot more money than we ever would. So this is not something that is about one administration. This is not something that's about one individual. This is about a great American tradition of providing protection at both the state and federal level and at the local level. And we are united here today, and I want to emphasize that in New York, our government officials have to step up. Our nonprofit sector has to step up. The faith community is more united than it's ever been. I mean, people think, oh, you know, believe me, the fact of getting different groups in the Jewish community to consider solidarity is challenging enough. The Muslim community has had similar issues in the past, but there are multiple. I speak to the bar association. There are multiple Muslim bar associations. Everyone now is feeling that sense of solidarity. Everyone is feeling that sense of unity. It's time for us to step up. It's also time for corporate New York to step up. We want our business leaders, the leaders of the business community, to do that too. That's what we're calling for. We are going to be together in this fight. We're going to stand united, and no one should live in fear. You can be concerned, you can be alert, but contact your clergy, contact my office, contact the hotline that was set up just 2 days ago at the state level. We're here to protect you. We need to get the resources in place quickly, but we have experience doing this before. We have been through a lot of hard times in New York. We have had a lot of great movements born here. We've had a lot of great American heroes lead movements that are born here. This is the home of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. This is the place that the Statue of Liberty guards the entry to our harbor with a welcoming message to all. We must reinforce that message in the weeks and months ahead. The determination of the people standing here is a great indication that we will do so. Thank you.
Thanks very much.